Hey guys, how you going? John here and Dan here for the SmartB. What did we decide to call it? SmartB Weekly Update Podcast.
Yeah, review of the weekend.
Yes, brilliant. How was your weekend, Dan?
Yeah, pretty good, thanks, John. Yeah, got my teeth into a couple of AFL games, watched a bit of the soccer, and yeah, kept up with the NRL. What about yourself?
Basically the same.
Yep.
I watched the Matildas game on Saturday, and I went to the England Matildas game on Wednesday.
Oh, nice.
And then I tried to watch the Dragons against the Storm. I got the jokes, Flano's peptides kicking in already with the first half of the match, and then, first 30 minutes of the match, and then got the jokes from my friends about how, they need to work out their cycles. There's a lot of enthusiasm, and then it all just waned. Yeah, it was a pretty good weekend for sport, I think. A lot of stuff happening, and NRL, the gift that keeps on giving.
Absolutely.
I want to actually start with the Bulldogs for you.
Yeah, sure.
What do you reckon happened with Tavita Pengai Jr.?
Well, it's bizarre, isn't it? So there were actually reports yesterday that he actually hasn't walked away with anything. There were reports originally that he had a $250,000 payout he was given by the club, but it looks like that's not true. He's actually walking away with nothing. I think they've had some hard conversations with him, and he's buckled under that pressure. I don't know why, for the life of me. He had a year to go on his contract, $750,000. The most they could have done in those discussions would have been to say, look, if you stay here, we're going to play you in reserve grade all year, which he should have just said, all right, I'll play in reserve grade all year and take my $750,000. I'm not walking away from that. Stay around for a year, take your money, $750,000, and then at the end of that season, have a look and see if any other clubs will take you on decent money, and then if nobody will take you, then go and do your $15,000 boxing fight.
The boxing thing is weird. He go for $750,000. He's not a famous person like Anthony Mundine or something, Sonny Bill, who can walk into boxing on $1 million paydays. He's going to get $15,000 show, $15,000 win bonuses.
Yeah.
He's going to fight on terrible undercards. I don't know much about the guy personally or whatever, but I doubt he has the connections like other boxers.
No.
Rugby league players go to boxing.
No.
It is just a lot of conspiracy theories going around on the internet.
I mean, it's just madness. You got a contract for $750,000. He's never going to be on $750,000 again in his life. You just take the money, and then after you see out your contract and collect your money, and you've got no other options, then go and box.
It's undeniably a crazy thing. And what are the Bulldogs gaining out of it, except for $750,000 in their salary cap? Couldn't they have shopped him around to the league and sent him somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, it's bizarre, but I mean, if the payout hasn't happened, which, again, the reports from Danny Widley yesterday that he's walked with nothing and there's no payout, the Bulldogs get the $750,000 back in the salary cap. So what they do with that going forward, well, they need to spend the money on a halfback. They still, I mean, Stephen Crichton's coming next year, but he's not a specialist fullback.
No.
They're still short a specialist fullback and a specialist halfback. That's where they need to put the money. Whether they'll have anyone available on the open market, well, we're not sure. At least now they've got the money to do it. Put it this way, I think the Bulldogs have done well out of this. To get that, Pengai Jr. has not played up to that price tag.
Absolutely.
So they get a free pass on that $750,000.
They can buy Ben Hunt.
Yeah. I mean, now that we're on to your mob, the Dragon, on to Ben Hunt. Ben Hunt's no Andrew Johns. He's not the player who, and I know not many players are, but you know what I'm saying. He's not the player who gets you to go from 16th into the top 8, into the top 4.
No.
He's not, because look at where the Dragons are. So you have to question, look, Ben Hunt's a great player, but he's not that player who takes you the extra mile.
I reckon he's going to go probably to the Dolphins or something on $500,000 next year, because the Dragons will definitely release him at the end of this year. And then it'll probably be on the condition that he returns to Queensland. And he's not going to go to Brisbane. They don't need a 7-9. He could go to the Titans,
Yeah, it sounds like Queensland's going to be the destination. He's going home.
And the Dragons will be left with no one.
It's unfortunate for your mob. But, I mean, from a Bulldogs point of view, they can't afford to get this one wrong.
No.
7 years out of the top 8.
There's some. I was at a Bulldogs event last week, and they did bring up some interesting stats because, as you know, in rugby league, when your team's going poorly, you make sure you give the stats that make them look like they're not so bad.
Yeah, exactly.
So they were the youngest team in the NRL by a fair mile in round 1. Actually, about 2 years average age younger than any other team. And like I would think that they would want to invest that $750K that they're going to get from TVP to, what did I just call him anyway? Tavita to someone more experienced. They need somebody older, somebody who's a premiership winner who's on the way out, and they could use that money to build some experience around the squad. The other really weird one, right? You know, they're finishing lower this year than they did last year. They've won 7 games this year, and they also won 7 games last year.
Yes.
Now, the reason they're lower is not because they're worse. It's because the teams that were worse than them are better.
Improved, yes.
So you have Titans. Yes. Last year they won 6. This year they've won 8.
Yeah.
You got the Warriors. Last year they won 6. This year they won 14.
Yeah.
And the Knights, 6. Well, now they've won 12 because they won on the weekend. So when I took these notes, I was a day behind. Last year they won 6, now 12. So they have improved in leaps and bounds. Titans not so much, but still better. Whereas the Bulldogs have stayed the same. And then you've got the Tigers who have gotten worse. They're the only club that's gotten worse, apparently. 4. One on the weekend, so 4 now.
So at the start of the season, the consensus around the Bulldogs was they'll probably finish about 9th or 10th. That was the consensus. They're 15th. So it's a failed season. It's a failed campaign. That means the general manager, Phil Gould's accountable. That means the coach, Cameron Ciraldo, is accountable. I don't know how he's avoided a lot of the heat that some of the other coaches have caught this season.
Protection from Phil Gould.
I mean, it's just, you know, they won 3 of their first 5 games this year. So that means that since then, they've only won 4 games. They've played, 22 in total. So that's 4 of their last 17. They've won 4 of their last 17 games. It's not acceptable.
And they haven't. This is the thing, right? What did you say? 7 years they haven't appeared in the finals.
Yeah, this is the 7th year in a row, no finals.
And they're losing one of their biggest buyers, who has been a failure. They've won the same amount of games. So where do they go for next year? Are we going to get the same tale that next year's? The fans have just had enough of this false hope. You're at a point where you've got no expectations as a Bulldogs supporter. You just go, well... The new Dragons fans.
We're on a unity ticket on that one, mate. Just year after year of just constant disappointment, and it continues. And all the indications are that it will continue again next season. Only Stephen Crichton really coming of any note. I mean, these other players they've signed, look, they're workman-like players. They do a job for you, like Jamin Salmon and Blake Taff. But again, they're not your Andrew Johns, Tom Trebojevic players who are going to take you from 15th into the top 8, into the top 4.
But also, like, you go back to what I said before, they're also young. They're signing more young players. Like, you know, they have some experience, premiership winning experience, but young. If you go back to, you know, the Dragons in 2010, I think one of the major signings, 2009, 2010, one of the best things they did was sign Nathan Feen.
Yeah.
Because he's an old man. He was like 100 years old at the time.
Yeah.
He played for his country. He played for Queensland, then he played for New Zealand. He'd won premierships, I believe, or come close to it, played in premiership games. They also signed other, like, elder kind of guys like Simon Wolford. And that gives the young guys like a baseline for how you should behave, how much commitment you have to have, and how... I think one of the major things about having young people is the losses don't affect him as much as it does an older person.
Yep,
that's right. More experienced player. So, yeah, I can't see the Bulldogs actually improving again next year, to be honest.
No, it's it's very unfortunate. And Phil Gould talks about how they're doing well in the lower grades. they've won lower grades competitions, but no one cares about the lower grades results. The lower grades are just there to facilitate the first grade team, either now or into the future.
Well, they care about them when they're losing. That's the thing.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
say, look, we won in the lower grades though. We're doing well in the lower grades. It's good in the lower grades, but yeah, look at your first grade club. You don't make a lot of money from winning in the lower grades.
No.
You don't get the ability to buy players by winning in the lower grades.
No, it's it's unfortunate. We're looking at going 10 years without being in the top 8. I can't see them being there in the next 3 years, and that's unheard of for the Bulldogs. In the past, they were one of the first teams in the finals.
They were one of those powerhouse teams. Melbourne, speaking of powerhouse teams, Melbourne hit their, I think it was 21st year in a row in the finals. Like, that's beyond ridiculous when you compare it to something like the Bulldogs, who used to be like that and are now more like the Tigers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's dire times at Belmore, unfortunately, John.
I don't think there's any excuse. They have money. They're a rich club.
Yeah, look at the Leagues Club.
Yeah. They have a big junior base, good junior competition, as we discussed. They're a powerhouse club that should attract good players. And, they tear through coaches like no one else. They just have players that come and don't perform.
Phil Gould's on a rumoured salary of $900,000 a year. Who's holding him accountable? Is the CEO holding him accountable? Is the chairman holding him accountable? Are they sitting down with him? Are they going through the decisions he's making? Are they holding him to account? Are they saying, look, we don't agree with this, we don't agree with that? Are they running checks on him? Because the last time they let one person run everything, they let Des Hasler run everything, and he back-ended all the contracts, and they still haven't recovered. He left 6 years ago, they still haven't recovered from him leaving. So it's very dangerous attaching all of your fortunes to one person, like an overlord like a Phil Gould. As I say, where is he being held accountable, and how long does this go on for? Do they just attach themselves to him for the next 5 years? The next 10 years? At what point do they go, well, this isn't working, we're going in a different direction?
Even with the coach, how long does Cameron Serrato have if they go this poorly again next year?
I think if they get, I think you're forgiven one bad year to start your coaching career. I think if you have 2, you're in strife, unless you're a Craig Bellamy, which wouldn't happen anyway with a Craig. So it's a silly comparison. But if you're a Wayne Bennett, Craig Bellamy, even a Trent Robinson, you can get away with maybe having 2 bad years. Pretty much every other coach can't get away with it. You're on the chopping block if you have 2 bad years in a row. So
they have to improve next year. They probably won't make the 8 again, given the quality of other teams' recruitment and stuff like that. But as long as they improve, do you think Cameron Serrato will be safe?
Yeah, there need to be, if they have that 9th or 10th year next year, and look at this stage, that's probably a best case scenario. I'm sorry to say. If they have that year next year, I think he's safe. If they finish bottom 4 again next year, it's red alert time for him.
Well, they don't want to become the Tigers, which is a good opportunity.
Well, that's right.
The Tigers.
Yeah, segue into the Tigers. Tigers. What do we say? It's even worse.
Out. I just want to go through Tim Sheen's
go
history with the Tigers.
Go for it.
Won a premiership with the Tigers.
Yeah.
He got fired.
Yeah.
He sued the club.
Yes.
He got hired to be a general manager.
Yes.
He fired the coach.
Yes.
He went and looked for a coach. Hired himself as the coach. Now he's sacked as the coach, and apparently won't be the GM anymore. I don't know what the latest is. You get different news reports saying he's going to be at the club, he's not going to be at the club, and now Benji Marshall is the coach. Is this a solution to the Tigers' 2nd year in a row with a wooden spoon?
It's just, the problem with fast-tracking Benji Marshall to the role, which is what's going to happen next year. Originally, he was meant to take over in 2025. That's been brought forward to 2024. The problem is he hasn't been fast-tracked for the right reasons. It's not like you're sitting there going, oh, Benji, you did such a great job as assistant coach this year. We can't bear to have you as assistant any longer. You must be the head coach next year. No. That's not the scenario here.
No,
He's been fast-tracked because Tim Sheens couldn't bear the job anymore. And, to be fair, he's nearly 73 years old. And that's totally understandable. So Benji's been fast-tracked because they've got no other option because they put this succession plan in place. It's not like they could go in and bring in an outside coach for a year. No, the only option is to bring Benji forward. He's only had one season as an assistant coach, and now he's taking over the most difficult club to take over in Australian sport. We just talked about Cameron Ciraldo, John. He's had 10 years as an assistant. Look how he's gone in his first year.
Yeah.
A 10-year apprenticeship wasn't enough for Ciraldo. Is 1 year at the struggling Tigers going to be enough for Benji? And I'm sorry to harp on with it, but, oh, sorry, I've just lost my train of thought. Sorry, go on. I was getting on a roll there. I'll come back to it, sorry.
The thing is, you're 100% right. A brand new coach, he's going to have Robbie Farah there to assist him, apparently.
Yeah.
And what's Robbie Farah's resume? Is you can't put a brand new coach in. He'll have no mentorship now that Tim Sheens is gone, in, out, whatever. But Tim Sheens, no matter what he does there, he's not going to be involved in the coaching.
Yeah.
He's going to have no mentorship. He's going to have nobody senior, no experienced coach helping him from what we know so far. And he's just going to have Robbie Farah and the current staff.
Yeah. And
at the Tigers.
The key word.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to mention. So a lot of people have said, and even Lee Hadjipentalis, the chairman, who he looks the part, he looks like Inspector Gadget with his big lab coat and his nice hat on. But there's not much substance to what he says. So what I was going to say before, sorry, John, was a lot of people are talking about, but it's okay because Benji was doing most of the coaching this year anyway. It's like, but they're coming last.
Yeah,
where's the confidence in that? They're coming
the
last.
Opposite. It's like, oh God, it's not okay. Benji's been doing it. We better look for something else. I can understand there are no other. Well, there's always coaches on the market, but I can't see them actually attracting any quality coach to the Tigers. It would take something big to get one of those high-level coaches to go to the Tigers, a Des Hasler style. I'm going to control every single little thing. Board isn't allowed to be involved. There's no recruitment manager. I'm going to control the salary cap, and then anybody who does that is going to, of course, leave the place in even more of a shambles. I don't understand how you can be a Tigers fan.
I don't know how they do it. It's hard enough being a Bulldogs fan, John. I don't know how the Tigers supporters do it. If you just don't mind, I'll just go back to Hadjipentalis for a second. So after the announcement that Benji Marshall would be fast-tracked to coach next year, he said the Tigers are ahead of schedule. He said they're ahead of schedule.
What's their schedule?
He said, and the future's very bright. What planet is he living on? Mars? He's detached from reality. They're coming last, and they're highly likely to win their second wooden spoon in a row this year.
So we'll just quickly check the ladder. Okay. They did win on the weekend. They beat
the Dolphins, yeah.
The Dolphins.
But, they were actually, if you can believe it, they were actually favourites with the bookmakers to win that game.
Yeah, I tipped them, and I was... I couldn't believe I was actually finally tipping them. They also did, it was a contentious win as well. With a penalty being awarded for a nonsense reason. So they did beat the Dolphins. They're still one win behind the Dragons.
Yeah.
If we check the draw, it's only 2 rounds left, right?
Yeah, 2 to go.
So
27 rounds this year. It's a lot of rounds, isn't it?
The Tigers have the Roosters this week.
They don't win that game.
Playing for their season, and then Manly next week. They're not going to win that either.
No, so highly likely the Tigers end up with another wooden spoon, John.
There's only the Dragons who can also get the wooden spoon, and they've got the Warriors this week that they'll definitely lose, and the Knights next week that they'll definitely lose. So in the end, what we're going to end up with is the Dragons on 5 wins, the Tigers on 4 wins, the Tigers with their second wooden spoon. You should be happy the Bulldogs can't get the spoon.
That's something. That's something.
They've won 7. They're too far ahead to get the spoon.
I mean, what I would say, John, is if you don't make the finals and you don't, does it really matter whether you come, 9th or second last? I mean,
no,
that's the thing. That's one very, very small consolation.
The Bulldogs got the Sea Eagles this week. So it is actually possible for the Bulldogs to get 16th, the Dragons could take the 15th spot.
There you go. The battle's on, John. We'll be keeping a close eye on that over the next couple of weeks.
It's also kind of funny because the Bulldogs still have a premiership market.
Well, now that is one way to throw away money.
Sports.
You may as well flush your money down the toilet, John.
Sportsbet's paying $501.
Well, it should be $5 million in one, shouldn't
But
it?
they can't make the finals, so I don't know. No, they actually legitimately can't make the 8, so that's still got to be updated, I guess, for the end of the
Yeah,
year.
I think that needs to be taken off the page there, John.
Rabbitohs, Cowboys and Roosters can still make the 8 at 8th.
John, I don't know if you caught Latrell Mitchell's game yesterday for the Rabbitohs.
Wow.
Missed that goal at 12-4 down from under the posts, from right in front.
He'll be out next week as well. I can't see him not getting suspended. He dropped the ball multiple times. He was a turnstile in defence. He had the worst game of his season.
And that was an important kick at 12-4. That changes the game. 12-4, 12-6. There's a huge difference. Souths were, they'd scored a try. They were getting back into the game, and he misses a goal from in front. You can't miss that goal. You can miss a goal if you're up from in front if you're up by 30, John.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't miss a goal from in front when you're down by 8 and you're trying to get back into the game.
He was so out of it yesterday. One of the best players in the world. He hasn't played much football this year, but still, goal kicking is not from in front. Should not be. That's not a contributor. Rabbitohs have the bye next week. So they've definitely got 30 points. And then you've got the Roosters getting that easy win against the Tigers. The Roosters can take their spot in the last round.
The Roosters are tuning up nicely for a September run, aren't they? Got 28 points, so they're
same as
level on competition points, only separated by for and against. If they've got a poor for and against the Roosters, that might count against them. Minus 62 there. The differential.
But if the Roosters win next week, well, they will win this week, and Rabbitohs get their 2 points, they'll both be on 30. Roosters will shore up their for and against a little bit, but it won't be enough to catch the Rabbitohs. But then their last round game is Rabbitohs-Roosters.
There you go. Well, that may decide that last spot in the 8 there. I mean, you'd have to think the top 7 are secure there.
Yeah,
a 3-point buffer between Newcastle on 31 points and South Sydney on 28 points. And you got the Cowboys, along with the Roosters, on 28, just outside on differential. So very interesting going into the last couple of rounds.
Cowboys have that positive differential again ahead of the Roosters. They've got the Dolphins this week. We'll get into the weekend preview later in the week, in more detail. But,
absolutely, yep.
Let's just have a quick look at that. So the Cowboys have got Dolphins this week, which they should win comfortably. They have not been the same team since Valentine Holmes has been out.
No.
Then they got the Panthers last round, which, depending on who the Panthers rest, I would say that the Cowboys will be the team that, out of those 3, that definitely misses the 8, because even if they win this week, they should lose next week. They should win this week.
And they will be hoping and praying that Penrith don't need to win that last game to win the minor premiership.
And it can be that way, because Broncos and Panthers are both on 40.
I mean, there is the possibility that Penrith won't care about the minor premiership and rest their players anyway and feel as though making sure they're cherry ripe for a run at a 3rd successive premiership is more important to them than winning the minor premiership. So, I mean, the Cowboys have got that in their corner, the real possibility that Penrith just have wholesale or just rest a whole bunch of players in that last round.
They could rest their top 7.
They could. It's possible they just play New South Wales Cup Penrith in that last round, John.
Because, we got... the Broncos playing the Raiders this week. Who the Broncos got next on their last round? Do they have a derby? No. I'm pretty sure they have someone easy actually on their last round. No, they've got the Storm at Brisbane.
That's a big game.
Yeah.
That's good. It's going to be good for the Broncos and the Storm, that game, to have that tune-up going into the finals. I think that's ideal for both clubs there.
Yeah, and the points differential is not realistic for the Broncos to catch, so it'll come down to... Panthers will win this week against the Eels. Eels are all gone.
You can put the red pen through them, John.
Don't worry, they've still got a market for the premiership at $81. which is better than the Roosters at 151.
Obviously those odds haven't been updated.
Somebody's got to do some updating for Monday morning.
I think they might need to get a bit of a move on there.
Sportsbet needs to prepare for us.
I'll tell you what, there'd be people who'd be getting on that $151, the Roosters. I know that might sound far-fetched, but they're hitting form at the right time, and they've got the roster to win it from anywhere in the top 8.
And they don't have any major injury concerns, nothing like that either.
No, they just haven't really clicked all year. They're just having a bit of an off year, but they get everyone fit and healthy at the back end.
Joseph Suwali issues at the beginning of the year may have derailed their early.
Yes.
Trent Robinson historically very good at ignoring the external factors, or getting the players to ignore the external factors. But I really think that because the Roosters were... They're trying to remember all this from 27 weeks ago. The football year is a long year.
But a lot of people were tipping them to win the premiership at the start of the season.
Yeah, I believe in my tipping comp I put them. So they won... Yeah, they had a good first 5 rounds, right? They won 3 out of 5. And it was around April that all that Suwali stuff came out. I remember early in the season there was some matches where tries would have been scored if he wasn't considered such a selfish player, holding onto the ball and things like that. And then they kind of derailed from there. But yeah, end of the year, they're really going well. Their form is 1, 2, 3. They've only been beaten by Brisbane and the Storm in the last few weeks. Like Manly beat them in round 18. They could actually win the premiership.
They've won 3 premierships in the last 10 years. You can never write them off. They know how to get it done when the whips are cracking, John.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting next 2 weeks. We know that 1 to 7 is booked. We got 3 teams vying for the 8th spot. We got realistically 2 teams vying for 16th, which I can't see that changing. I can't wait, actually. Excuse me.
Yeah, so as you say, top 7's locked in. We're just waiting on that last spot in the top 8. It looks like, you've got obviously South, the Cowboys, the Roosters, the Eels, Manly. I think that's just going to be too hard. Yeah, so the Eels are out too. So it's a 3-way battle. Yeah. Rabbitohs, Cowboys, Roosters for that last spot.
In theory, the Eels could do it, but you're relying on mathematics.
Once you start talking mathematics, you may as well give it away, John.
Mitch Moses is out for the rest of the year as well. Yeah. That's their best player. So
that's the thing.
It's Rabbitohs, Cowboys, Roosters vying for 8th. It's highly unlikely that they will be able to get to 7th, even though mathematically they can.
Yeah.
With the Knights playing the Sharks this week. So it's possible for the Roosters, Cowboys and Rabbitohs, if they win their next 2 matches, they will be on 32 points. That would require the Knights to lose their next 2, and then the Knights would be 8th. So again, not likely, not going to happen. The Knights are in...
Yeah, they're in too good a form. But this is probably the best Newcastle look since Andrew Johns retired.
Yeah, this is... I don't know what happened, because they weren't the best team earlier in the year.
No, it's all come together, and the coach Adam O'Brien, he was under serious pressure there midway through the year, and all that noise is gone now.
I tipped him to be the first to lose his job.
There you go. And then, so he's come good, hasn't he? You got to hand it to him.
Knights being good is a good thing, I think, for rugby league. They're not the most followed team, but they're kind of everyone's second team.
They're a team that you want to see do well. It's good for the game. If they do well, it's a rugby league area, and you want to see It's hard to keep up with the name of that stadium up there, John. They change the name of it every year. But McDonald Jones Stadium, I think it's called now, John.
Great.
It used to be the old Marathon Stadium. You'd like to see that stadium filled up every week, John, and that's a good thing for rugby league.
Yeah.
And obviously our teams are not going to feature, so they're the sort of side that supporters like us of the other teams that haven't made it would want to get behind.
Well, they're my team for the finals. They'll be bottom at the bottom of the 8th, 7th. Okay, so mathematically, they could possibly get to 4th at this stage with 2 more games to go, it would require the Storm, Sharks, and Raiders to all lose their next 2, and the Knights to win their next 2, and then Knights could be 4th. That would be crazy.
Yeah. But more realistic is they finish in the 5 to 8.
Yeah, definitely.
Positions.
Actually, this game this week, Knights versus the Sharks, is a super interesting one because of that. If the Knights win, they immediately jump to 5th.
Yeah, well, that gives the Knights that opportunity to leapfrog the Sharks into that 5th position. I guess it depends what the Raiders do this week as well, but yeah, the Knights can obviously use that to their advantage. They don't, beat the Sharks and they're on their way.
They don't get a home final, do they? They get a.
If they finish 5 or 6, they do get a home final.
Yeah, they're regional, so they. That'll be just amazing. Oh God!
It's the best time of year, John. The footy finals.
Yeah, I got one more thing for NRL.
Go for it.
Which for me was a bigger thing. The Payne Haas thing at the Broncos.
Yeah.
His manager is a genius. I don't know who his manager is. Genius. Yeah, rugby union. He had 8 clubs. He had, everyone
he used those clubs as leverage, didn't he?
And Payne Haas ended up signing. He's a forward, a 3-year, $3.5 million contract, $1.2 million a year for a prop, highest paid player in Broncos history. I understand the salary cap has changed a lot that adjusts that, but even I read one article, I can't remember who it was by, adjusted for changes to salary cap and percentage wise. He's the highest paid player ever in the history of the Broncos. And he's a prop.
It doesn't make salary cap sense, John. So you get as of this year, it does go up every year, but this year, in 2023, you get $11.45 million to spend on your top 30 squad. So the problem with paying someone like Payne Haas $1.2 million a year, ordinarily, as you say, you would want to be not spending more than about $500,000 a year on a prop. So the thing about Payne Haas is he'll do a great job. He'll play well. He's the best front rower in the game. But the problem is going to be, now that you've paid him $1.2 million a year, you'll have to let other good players go to facilitate that. And losing those players could be enough for the Broncos to go from being a top 4 team, a premiership contender, to down into the 5 to 8 slots. So with Payne Haas, he'll do a great job. But the issue's going to be, well, who do they have to let go to facilitate the deal?
I mean, you can't build a team around a prop.
No.
You can't. You just can't. They don't touch the ball enough. They don't play enough minutes. They touch the ball a lot. They make a lot of tackles. They play minutes. They do a very, very vital job. In
this day and age, they do a job for you, but they're not the key players. Yeah. The big money's got to go to your spine players these days. The days of the forwards winning you the game... that doesn't happen. It's the spine wins you the game. Yeah, the halfback, 5/8 hooker, fullback.
Reduction in interchange means props aren't late in the game. He's going to be too tired to do anything that makes him worth $1.2 million. Of course, the Broncos have historically had their salary cap. I remember the rumours of Darren Lockyer being on $200,000 a year under the cap.
I just don't want us to get sued on our first show.
They were rumours, allegedly speculation, all that kind of thing. But it's these decisions that happen. That's for 3 years, so that's 24, 25, 26. If the Broncos don't win this year, Adam Reynolds doesn't have much left in him. How old's Adam Reynolds? 30.
He's on the wrong side of 30.
Yeah, well, actually, just so we can confirm 100% how old Adam Reynolds is. I've got to spell Adam right. One day we'll have a producer to do this stuff for us. So Adam Reynolds is 33 years old. So he can play another 3 years, but he won't stay at that level that he's at now. He's a clutch player, match winner, but
he's a game manager, and he does a mighty fine job at it too.
And he's injured a lot, and the Broncos don't look as good without him. And
so this is the issue. The issue is going to be, well, now that you've paid Payne Haas that amount of money, somebody's got to make way then. Maybe not just one player, maybe a couple of players, and they're going to be good players too.
Yeah, they could end up paying less for forwards, but then your forward pack becomes soft and built all fully around one player who can't play.
And if he gets injured, then it's It's a risky game. Paying, as you said, John, paying a prop forward $1.2 million a year.
Best manager in the league.
Yeah, full credit to him.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable. So, before we move on to any AFL, anything else from you for rugby league?
Look, I was just going to say, I guess maybe this gives us a bit of a segue into AFL, John. There was a big blow-up between Gordon Tallis and Laurie Daly on television the other night. Now, Gordon Tallis took exception to Laurie Daly saying the night before on another program that he felt like the AFL was a bigger, better, more dominant code than the NRL. It got very heated, a very heated discussion. So, John, I thought I'd use that as a way to have the debate ourselves. So I did a bit of research yesterday. Just going to run you through some key figures here. I think, Daly I think he's right. I mean, if you just hear me out for a second, I won't say the exact figures, but I'll give a close number, so I won't go into the specific numbers. So the top 5 AFL clubs for memberships, 2023. Collingwood, 102,000. Richmond, 100,000. West Coast, 100,000. Carlton, 93,000. Geelong, 81,000. Top 5 NRL clubs for memberships this year. The Broncos, 40,000. South Sydney, 32,000. Melbourne, 29,000. The Dolphins, 28,500. The Raiders, 23,500. Top 5 AFL clubs for highest home crowd averages in 2023. Collingwood, 66,000. Carlton, 52,000. Richmond, 50,000. Melbourne, 44,000. Essendon, 43,000. NRL top 5 highest home crowd averages this season. The Broncos, 33,000. Roosters, 24,000. Dolphins, 24,000. Warriors, 22,000. The Storm, 21,500. So sorry, I know I've gone on a bit there, John.
But can I just first of all just point out that's the weirdest stat ever, that the Roosters are in the top 5.
Yeah. Sorry, I did have to double check my notes, John. I had to double check.
It's AFL traditionally has way better crowd numbers, way better memberships, and that's where the money is. The NRL always promotes itself as a TV game. And the AFL and NRL TV deals are approximately the same. So being a TV game and being so far behind on membership and crowd averages shows that AFL is actually the more dominant sporting code. Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned the TV deals, John. I actually had a good look at them as well. Yeah. So the NRL TV deal, worth $2 billion, runs from this year, 2023, until 2027. It's a 5-year deal, so at $2 billion, that's $400 million per year. The AFL's next TV deal, which they've already done, runs from 2025 until 2031. It's a 7-year deal worth $4.5 billion, so $643 million a year. Wow.
So there you go.
TV deal, isn't it?
Yeah, there you go. But I mean, that having been said, the AFL has no international presence. The NRL has a presence in New Zealand. The International Rugby League features, Fiji, Tonga, Papua New Guinea, who all have strong teams. Rugby League has a presence in England with the Super League, and there's a French team in that competition. The NRL also has, 2 of the 3 biggest markets. The AFL doesn't have a second big market. Queensland's a lot bigger than Western Australia, South Australia, Tasmania. So,
but when you put all those things together, there's no reason why the NRL shouldn't be bigger than the AFL.
No, there's not, and then you have to look at the management, don't you?
Yeah, I was just management. You think
I think the Super League war, I think it held rugby league back a lot, John, and I think the Super League war gave the Swans an in Sydney that they didn't have prior to the Super League war.
I remember a few years ago, if we had a producer, we could look it up. We need our very own young Jamie. There was a stat that I read that the Swans were the most followed sporting team in Australia. Simply, obviously not memberships, crowd averages, that kind of thing, but based on a survey done on the street in multiple states by one of the news organisations, they just asked everyone, what are your top 3 sporting teams? and the Swans was the most followed.
Yeah.
And that was it. I think it was a leapover from the Super League war. NRL can't continue to blame the Super League war, though. This is like the current government blaming the previous government from 5
That's right, yeah.
5 terms ago. Like, it's 25 years ago.
Yeah, it's a long time ago. I don't think that they can use it as an excuse. I just think that it's still having an effect. But as you say, it's a long time ago. We need to be moving on
thing
from
you just
that.
mentioned, we have which actually is a good point. The NRL for the international presence. They just announced Australia will be hosting the Rugby League World Cup in 2025. 2025.
The next one, yeah.
Yeah, whatever the next one is.
Yeah.
So international presence alone should keep the Rugby League NRL above AFL in like numbers, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. You don't find fans, not that many non-Australian fans of AFL. There's not that many. The mix of international fans in Australia for the rugby league is much higher. A lot more New Zealanders, the islands, Fiji, PNG, that kind of thing. They follow rugby league. They don't follow AFL.
Yeah.
So where does AFL get their numbers from? Melbourne.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's just a cultural thing in Melbourne. In Sydney, if you go to the pub to watch the game on TV. In Melbourne, you go to the game. It's just it's a cultural thing down there. But you talk about the expansion of the NRL's expansion plans. That they shouldn't be looking at Adelaide or Perth again. They should be looking at Fiji, Tonga. Yeah. The Pacific Islands are the next frontier.
Who's the PNG Hunters in the
Queensland Cup?
Yeah. That shows that they can be based out of Australia, because unfortunately PNG doesn't have the stadium quality to host regular rugby league games.
Yeah,
that's a given. But they could be based out of Australia for a few years while money is invested in that area. Because Fiji, PNG have massive rivalries in rugby league, but you just know that the Fijians would prefer the PNG team. You immediately gain a big following for a team. They should. I really think because it's the NRL. They could change it to IRL. It becomes an international rugby league.
That's right. That's the sensible expansion option for me. I don't think the Warriors have been strong enough. I don't think their presence in New Zealand is strong enough for a second New Zealand team at this stage. Maybe in the future you wouldn't rule that out. I'd certainly be more in favour of a second New Zealand team than I would going back to Adelaide or Perth. But as for the next step, John, I think we're going to the Pacific Islands, Fiji, Tonga, Papua New Guinea.
I believe it is before the next TV deal. They said they would expand again. And they're taking the pictures now. One of the offers is moving of a team. And every single time they discuss moving of teams, the West Tigers come up as a good team to move.
I wonder why, John.
Is that the solution for the Tigers? Probably. They need to try something different. I would really love to see a PNG. The PNG Hunters just moved up to the NRL.
Yeah, and that 18th team gets you that extra game each week, which is beautiful for the TV broadcasters, John, and that's how you take your TV deal from $400 million a year up into that $643 million a year region. That's a big reason, one of the reasons why the AFL gets bigger money per year for their TV deal. They've got an extra game with the 18 teams.
Speaking of that, they do talk about NRL, rugby league being a TV game. Look, I've been to live games, rugby league, AFL, football, soccer. I went to one rugby union game when I was younger. Out of all of those sports, look, there is a thing to this, right? The rugby league is way better on TV. Sorry to say. I go to 10, 12 games a year of rugby league.
Yeah.
But on the television production, because in rugby league you follow the ball. Yeah. This is why. You follow the ball and nothing else. It doesn't matter what's happening off the ball. There are set plays and things like that. I can remember one very clear game I went to where it was a scrum play in front of the line. The Dragons had, in front of the try line, the Dragons had no one on the right, and you could see Mark Gasnier coasting across behind. I said to my wife, my girlfriend at the time, they're going to pass to Gaz and he's going to score. There was the one time in the history of me watching rugby league, since I was 7 years old, that I can remember it mattering that I was at the game and could see the whole field. The rest of the time, I can stay on the ball and it's fine.
Yeah, that's
When
right.
I went to the AFL, I realised it's like talking to this. I'm not a huge AFL follower. I didn't understand the rules at the time.
Yeah.
Talking to the people around me, and they were explaining what's happening up here when the ball's all the way down here. It really, really mattered. It really mattered that you could see the whole field. And I went to that Matildas game on Wednesday.
Yeah.
For the whole entire World Cup, I've watched every Matildas game. My wife is a big football fan.
Yeah.
I would generally be watching something else on my phone while it's on the TV, but at the game, that's a crowd atmosphere.
Yeah, the atmosphere.
That's the crowd thing. Doesn't matter about what's happening on the field. Off the ball, you follow the ball in football. You don't follow off the ball. I mean, you can, but it's not as important. But the crowd is something, And it does show you the kind of things that the NRL should be doing on TV, with TV. AFL can concentrate on their crowd numbers, but if the NRL could show these kind of things, watch the NRL on TV, they could generate more income from their TV deal as well. There's no reason why the NRL shouldn't get more ratings and a higher payment because of it.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, that's the thing you mentioned. I mean, with the AFL, the ball just moves too quickly for TV. Kick to kick to kick. The TV camera has trouble keeping up with it. As you say, in rugby league, the ball doesn't move as quickly. It's passed around. You might get one kick at the end of a set of 6. It's easy to keep up with one kick every minute or so.
You know when it's coming.
Yeah, and you know when it's coming. And then you're just sort of passing the ball, one to the other. So it's much easier for the TV camera to keep up with it. That it could be part. The viewing experience is just so good for the NRL TV viewer, and ticket prices are high. Cost of living's hard. You're paying $8 for a meat pie at the game. I mean,
Yeah, it's all cashless now as well at the stadiums.
So you can see why people are just going, well, why would I go to a rugby league game when I can have a great viewing experience on TV?
Exactly. But the NRL could promote that. Rugby league fans love suburban stadiums. I don't. I like the comfort of the...
You prefer the bigger stadium with not having as many people?
Yeah.
I understand that.
That's fine. I'm the exception, not the rule. Rugby league fans love suburban stadiums.
But you know what? I'm probably the same as you, because you get... It's great to see... at Jubilee Oval you get 20,000, Belmore you get 20,000. It's great to look at, but if you're actually there, you're spending how long lining up to get a beer, how long to line up getting a meat pie, how long to line up to go to the toilet.
And when they announced don't sit down on the hill because it's too full. This was my major reason for stop going to suburban stadiums. when the stadiums are packed, you're not allowed to sit down on the hill. I got to stand here for 2 hours. But they could fill suburban stadiums week in, week out with rugby league fans, die-hard rugby league fans, and they could also get massive ratings on television.
Yeah.
There was a period of time where rugby league was, every year when they would release the top watched things per year, it would be 10 rugby league games, maybe one AFL game in there. State of Origin is historically the most watched television event yearly.
Yeah.
They get the fill out stadiums for them, that's fine. But I think more of an investment in suburban stadiums, regional games, making it a national game, things like adding the PNG Hunters, improving the television experience. I watched a State of Origin game in 3D once.
Oh, wow.
At the cinemas.
Wow.
New South Wales lost, it sucked. But that was...
an experience.
I would do that every week.
Was that at the IMAX theatre or was it somewhere?
No, it was at events. They had it at...
so they had it... so they gave you the 3D glasses, did they? Yeah, well, that would have been an experience.
It was, and I would do that every week. I understand 3D cameras are super expensive and the production is too expensive and whatever, but this is the kind of thing I'm talking about, where if Rugby League invested in much more in television quality, they could actually generate more income from their television deal, invest more money in grassroots, build the game up more, get more teams on, and that would be a better path than trying to chase AFL for crowd numbers.
Well, it's just a fight that they're never going to win, John. I mean, as I said, I'll just quickly so Collingwood get 66,000 as that's Collingwood's home crowd average this season is 66,000. The Broncos' high home crowd average this year is 33, so it's half that. Yeah. So that's all you really need to look at to go, look, this is a mountain that's going to be too hard to climb. So they, as you said, they need to make up the ground in the other areas you're talking about.
I went to the opening of the Rectangle Stadium in Melbourne, whatever it's called now, Marvel Stadium. Is it Marvel Stadium?
It is Marvel Stadium, yep. St Kilda beat Geelong there the other night.
Oh, really?
And ended Geelong's season, yeah.
So I went there, and next door was a international match. It was Australia versus New Zealand. It was really good. They did this thing afterwards where you could, they launched a website where you could find yourself in the crowd. It's high resolution cameras. You could zoom in, and I found myself and my mates and stuff. We could hear the AFL crowd next door. They were louder than us. They had like a 90,000 attendance at some club AFL game in the MCG on the same night as an international for rugby league. No chance in hell rugby league will ever catch the AFL.
Yeah, I went to a game a number, probably going back about 14 years ago, John. I was in Melbourne. I went to a game between the Swans and Carlton. From memory, neither team were really performing that well. They weren't, right at the bottom of the ladder, but they weren't, setting the world on fire either team. This is Carlton against an out-of-town team. They filled the stadium, John.
Yeah, it's never... rugby league, we're the experts. Everything's easy. Rugby league, I think, needs to change tack. There's a lot of things around that in sports in general. Like, we'll get into a bit later with female... women's sports and things like that. Like, I find the way people are thinking is really wrong. When we get into football and rugby union, we'll talk about that. But yeah, let's touch on the AFL a bit more.
Yeah, we'll go into the AFL now.
So I don't know if you read the West Coast Eagles boards were going to sack Adam Simpson. Yeah,
well, that's no surprise looking at where they are on the ladder.
And then West Coast Eagles won.
Yeah, but you sort of it's the same with the Tigers beating the Dolphins, isn't it? You got to look at the big picture, right? Like, one sunny day doesn't make a summer, John.
They are now no longer 16th. Oh, sorry, 18th. NRL head. They're 4 points clear of North Melbourne, and they beat the Western Bulldogs, possibly ending the Bulldogs' season in September. Like, they'll finish up now. The Giants are ahead of them by 4 points now. The Bulldogs probably can't make the 8.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Yeah, there you go. Unbelievable. And I think, John, so the way the draft works in the AFL, you're better off coming last. You get the first pick. So did West Coast really want to win that game?
Well, they made a small mistake.
This comes up every year, but if you don't mind me going into it, John, there's a very, very interesting incident in the Sydney-Adelaide game on the weekend. 70 seconds to go. Ben Keys from Adelaide, had a shot at goal. Very tight whether it hit the post or not. The goal umpire should have reviewed the decision, didn't review.
It didn't hit the post.
Said it hit the post, it didn't hit the post. Unbelievable that it wasn't reviewed. Replays showed it was a goal. Apparently, they have a look at the video if it's a goal to make sure it's a goal, but if it's a behind, they don't have time because the kick out's so quick after a behind. So it wasn't looked at, and the AFL haven't come out and said as much. They're not going to do it publicly, but it looks like that goal umpire is going to be stood down for the last game of the season. And if you stood down for the last game of the season after a mistake that big, well, you're not going to get a look in the finals. They're going to go with the best goal umpires in the finals game.
But that doesn't give the Crows fans or the Crows team anything standing down there.
No, it doesn't. And the problem was, John, that it happened with 70 seconds to go.
Yeah.
So that's the issue. So there was more to come after that.
That was legitimately a game-changing decision.
Yeah, so I guess the issue is there was still time to go after that. So you could argue, well, they could have kicked the goal in the last minute. That's the problem. If it had been on the last play of the game, well, then you could argue, well, should they be overturning the result like they did back in 2006 with that siren issue with Fremantle and St Kilda way back when? that's when you could legitimately go, well, it was the last kick of the game. We can overturn the result here with time to go. How do you do that, John?
Yeah, I like actually because this brings up. I have this conversation yearly because no matter what the sport is, you got the VAR, you got the bunker, you've got the review system in AFL, you've got the snicker meter in cricket. No matter what the sport is, right? People will use this example as like why they should review things more, and then when the review makes a mistake, they'll use this as an example of why they shouldn't review anything. Now, my opinion for all of these things, which again I go through this every year with people during sports seasons, is in a game in which there is time, exactly what you're talking about. Every single point should be reviewed by technology. So in NRL when there's a try scored, AFL when there's a goal scored, soccer when there's a goal scored, every single, 100% of them. When there is no time behind, in basketball you have no time. 0 of them should be. Like, it just should be 0. We shouldn't have watched that footage. They shouldn't have released it. The broadcaster shouldn't have showed everyone that Adelaide's season is over because of a referee mistake. They should hide it from the world. Because all it does is create argument. It creates, ongoing controversies, which is good for the games.
Yeah.
But it just frustrates the crap out of me.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess it is a whole other... We could probably, maybe in the summer months when things are a bit quieter, we could do a whole show on this, John, the role of technology in sport. Maybe it's a bigger debate for another day, but I guess in this instance... The goal umpire, you can understand the goal umpire in real time making a mistake. Things happen so quickly, but to not go to the review when you have that option available to you in that situation with the game on the line, Sydney up by 2 points. So it's literally basically 70 seconds to go. It's deciding the result of the game. And in this case, it's decided Adelaide's season. They're not going to play in the finals as a result. So this is pretty much short of a team losing a grand final over a decision like that. This is pretty much the next biggest scenario, a team missing out on the finals, essentially, because of it. But my argument, we could talk about the role of technology in sport on another day in detail, but in this instance, if you've got it available to you, you've got to use it. Yeah. And it's inexcusable not to use it.
And so this is the thing with this Adelaide specific one, right? So their season is essentially over. They do have one more game to go, and they're playing the Eagles. So they definitely would have won. So that would have put them to 48 points. It's 4 points in the AFL for...
Yes, it is, yes.
So they would be on 44 right now, which would put them out of the 8. Okay,
so they're on 40, they would have been 44. Their percentage is very good, though. Their percentage is the best out of all the teams from 6 through to about 14 there.
They'd be on 44 points and they would be 9th. Okay, then if they win next week, their percentage is so good when compared to the rest. And the GWS lose. Then Adelaide gets into the finals.
Okay, so they would have needed... So let's say that they won against Sydney, which they should have. They would be 44 now. If they beat West Coast next week, which they would, they'd be 48. So they would still need... So maybe it's a bit of a stretch to say it's cost them the season because they'd still need GWS to lose next week. And that may not happen.
Well, GWS are playing Carlton. And Carlton is in form. They're on 5.
Yeah, I mean they're
5.
Carlton would be favourites, but GWS would be a chance of winning.
Exactly. So look, it's when we're getting really deep into the discussion of whether it ended their season.
Yeah. But it's denied them the opportunity.
Yes. That's it. So you have to think about it and the improvements to systems, technology, and stuff like that. Because if it was the Giants who it happened to, they would be on 44 now, and then they would probably miss the 8 next week. If it was the Bulldogs that happened to, who are now on 44 and out of the, they lost anyway, but they are now out of the 8, they would definitely miss the finals. If it happens next week, to the Bulldogs, to Essendon, to the GWS Giants, and one of them missed the 8, and most importantly, as you alluded to, if it happened in a grand final, what would you do?
Well, I mean, the thing, what I can't believe, John, I know that in the AFL they have goal umpires, so it's on the goal umpire for a decision like that, but I can't believe the on-field umpire can't intervene in that scenario and go, listen, mate, we need, this is, and I know the stage of the game shouldn't really matter with these things. It's either a goal or it's not. But surely in that situation, you get the on-field umpire should be able to come in and say, well, look, we really need to have a look at that.
Well, one of the major things about it, I think, is it goes up onto the big screen at the stadium. And they should be able to look up and see it and go, wait, guys. But, there are certain rules in certain sports in which they're not allowed to look at the screen. The umpires, referees aren't allowed to look at it, but they should be allowed to. Because they're in front of their face. Right there. Like, why can't... in our NRL, look, we're majority NRL people, so we'll always allude to the NRL, which is the perfect sport. In the NRL, they have the video ref who can call down to the refs here and go, nah, mate, you need to review that. And as long as, again, like I said before, they have a delay, so there's a lot more time between try and kick. Until the kick is kicked, the try can be overturned. Mm. So they have a lot more time to come back down and go, hey, dude, that's your post. But it's still like, there is no reason why you can't go back. If nothing major's happened, there has to be a rule in which you can say, hold on, I'm the on-field ref. Yeah. I've seen it up there. Everybody knows that guy was wrong. Let's have a look and fix this.
Yeah, I mean, there is, again, probably a discussion, a more detailed discussion for a quieter day, but there is the argument that, we don't want to upset the flow of the game, so we won't look at the technology and we'll let the game flow and not worry about it. I mean, there is that argument as well. Just go with the umpire, they'll get some wrong, live with it, but don't upset the flow of the game. And that's the thing. I mean, I know in tennis it works perfectly because it's a black and white result. The ball's in or it's out and you know straight away. Cricket, it's pretty good in cricket because cricket's a slow game anyway. You bowl, you take a long time to bowl the next ball. Absolutely. You're waiting around all day with cricket anyway. Well, what's another minute to review a decision? But rugby league's meant to be a fast-paced game. You're not meant to stop after every try and look at every decision. The AFL, it's similar.
They're in between AFL. Some of it's fast, some of it's slow, and that's why I think so. When I say they should use technology to look at everything, I don't want to see that nonsense, bunker shit. Pardon my French. Now we have to put a language warning on it. Where they go on and on and on and look at the reason to disallow the try. I want to see a quick review. And I was like, yeah, that's it. So the AFL could do things like, they could do things like implement infrared sensors between the posts and things like that. That's an investment in technology that I don't think any sport in the world spends that much time on, because they'd have to go around to every stadium.
Yeah,
I know basketball has some places, stadiums, where the net actually, the rim has a detector. That's the other one. I believe ice hockey also has some goals that have a detector. That detects whether the ball, like the puck, actually goes in. Yeah. Those are the kind of things that an improvement in technology would reduce the need for human interactions. Yeah. But it's a massive investment that I think sports, especially Australia, don't have time, patience, or money to do.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think in the AFL they don't go to it nearly as much as they do in the NRL, and that doesn't interrupt the game anywhere near as much. I mean, that Adelaide-Sydney scenario was a situation where they really should have gone to it. But overall, they don't use it too much. In rugby league, they do use it too much. But anyway, probably a big debate for another day.
The other thing about that game, actually, was the Swans were up by 32 points going into the fourth quarter.
And Carlton kicked 4 goals to nil. Adelaide kicked 4 goals to nil in that last quarter.
That's going to be the end of the Swans in the finals. They got to sort out their fourth quarter. They're just dying in the fourth quarters.
I mean, you mentioned the Swans in the final. I mean, they're in the finals now.
Yeah,
St Kilda also in the finals. They ended Geelong's premiership defence after that 33-point loss at Marvel Stadium on Saturday night. It's only the second time since 2011 that St Kilda's played finals, haven't won a premiership since 1966. Geelong have missed the top 8 for only the second time in Chris Scott's 13 seasons in charge as coach. Carlton as well. They beat the Gold Coast Suns. They're going to play finals for the first time since 2013, so a decade out of the finals for them. Charlie Curnow kicked 5 goals for Carlton. That was their 9th win in a row, and coincidentally, it was their win over the Suns back in round 14 that started that streak. So the Suns are at each end of that 9-game winning streak. So Charlie Curnow, with those 5 goals, he's on track for back-to-back Coleman medals. He's got 75 goals for the season.
Wow.
So there you go.
Can Carlton push for the premiership with their current form?
Well, I mean, Collingwood are sort of they're having a bit of trouble without Nick Dacos at the moment, and without Darcy Moore, their skipper. I mean, Darcy Moore will be back for the finals. Dacos, it's more line ball. You know, he could come back for the prelim or the grand final, but maybe not. So, you know, you're just sort of feeling with Collingwood like they've peaked too early.
And they peaked well ahead. Yeah. They were 6-8 weeks ago. They were guaranteed first spot. Now it is possible for them to lose the first spot to the Lions.
Yeah, well, percentage is the same as the Brisbane Lions.
Yep.
So
if Lions
and the Brisbane Lions beat them the other night too.
Yeah, Lions win this week, Collingwood lose this week. So that's Collingwood versus.
Yeah, so that's on a knife's edge, that percentage there. I know that the minor premiership, it's not a thing in the AFL. Yeah, they just don't talk about it. It's not.
But it's still bragging, right?
Oh yeah, it's still, you know, finishing the regular season in first spot. That's nothing to be sneezed at, John.
First and second is exactly the same in AFL, unless you are the Brisbane Lions and Collingwood supporters.
But there's no big $100,000 bonus and a JJ Giltinan shield for winning the minor premiership.
Yeah, they both get their home final. It will come down to this week. Brisbane Lions have the arguably harder task. They'll be playing St Kilda versus Collingwood against Essendon.
That's a big game going into the finals.
It's the
with Essendon still. I know it's not a great. Essendon's percentage is terrible. Yeah. No, so Essendon, you'd have to rule them out. That's 92.7 percentage.
I think it's only really the Bulldogs who can make the finals.
Yeah, it's the Bulldogs are the only team that can get in. Essendon's no chance.
And if GWS win against Carlton, which probably won't, it will come down to percentages. So where Bulldogs have got to beat Geelong, and then they'll take the 8th spot.
Mm.
So it's like I love the news articles like, you know, the Eagles have ended Bulldogs' finals aspirations, but it's actually like more likely that they will make 8th because the Giants have to beat Carlton, who are actually the form team of the comp.
Yeah, you can't put a line through the Bulldogs yet.
And the Bulldogs have to beat Geelong, who
have nothing to play for next week.
They can't win. They're in terrible form.
And again, we say it every time with the AFL because they have a draft. It's in their interest to lose and finish lower. Now that they can't make the finals, it's in their best interest to lose the game and finish lower down the ladder.
So they could, in theory, finish
13th. If Adelaide
Adelaide win and Richmond win and Geelong lose,
they could slip to 13th. Yeah, and it's in their best interest to slip, John.
Does that actually happen? Do you think?
Well, in the past it has, and teams have got in trouble for tanking at this stage. I know the Melbourne Demons, obviously now they're one of the powerhouses of the competition,
so
but back. Well, I mean, look at them now. Look at how long they spent down the bottom. But, you know, they got in trouble for tanking back a number of years ago now. It's happened in the past, John. But, you know, we're not making any allegations. We're not getting ourselves in potential legal hot water.
It's a terrible, terrible thing to do given the amount of gambling that happens, actually.
Yeah, well, that's the danger. That's why they get in so much trouble. That's why if they're going to do it, they have to really make it look like they're not doing it.
It's not like in the basketball, in the NBA when Chicago Bulls did it. But
there you go.
That was blatantly obvious.
Well, it's an argument against the draft, John.
That's another.
There's a lot of arguments for the draft. And, you know, it's not the only problem with the draft. An issue with the draft is, you're rewarding teams for coming last. Yeah. I mean, is that really to go, you came last so you get the first pick? I mean, you have to earn your success, don't you?
I can't actually, I think that's another good one. We'll do a deep dive during lower seasons
Yeah,
drafts and so on, because an even competition is always better than an uneven competition.
Yeah.
Moneyball exists. They have teams in certain leagues in different countries and different competitions in which it's obvious like which teams are there making up the numbers. They can't afford players. Does the draft work? Sometimes. Does the salary cap work? Sometimes. Everyone who is every organisation, no matter which one they use, they'll give you all the statistics for why they work, and they'll ignore all the statistics for why they don't.
100%. Yeah.
And there are examples for all of them. Like salary caps are as much as they want to say they work, they just don't. It comes down to like rorting of salary caps. Clubs that are in better locations. There's a lot of things that go into what makes actually a club work. It's not just how much money they spend actually.
So what's the solution? Do you just make it a free for all and go, well, if you can afford it, pay it, but then you turn into the English Premier League,
that's exactly
where you only get the same four, pretty much 3 or 4 teams winning it every year.
You got English Premier League teams that are, you should know. I don't think you should ever have a competition in which a club level team, no matter how high level the club is, a club level team could beat one of your like World Cup country teams, and there are a bunch of club level teams in the Premier League that would beat 8 of the 16 round of 16 people in the teams in the World Cups. Australia makes the round of 16, but they get smashed by Man City.
Yeah.
Like it's like smashed. It wouldn't even be real. Like it'd just be nonsense. And I think like a solution is to have this kind of unwritten rule in place that clubs shouldn't be that good. They should be clubs. Like I know obviously countries in World Cup situations, some countries don't have money, some countries are making up the numbers, some countries don't have the supporters. But my solution to that is to reduce your knockout rounds. Don't have rounds of 16, have rounds of 8. We'll get into this too. That's a good discussion.
There's plenty of rabbit holes we can go down in those summer months, John.
Just a quick thing on Buddy Franklin's going to actually get to do his lap of honour at the SCG. He got retired. He had to retire with no send off. It was kind of depressing. He is 107 years old. The Swans will play Melbourne at the SCG this week, and he's going to do a lap of honour. So if you are a Swans fan, make sure you get out there and say farewell to Buddy.
100%.
He, was a pivotal piece of their success. He signed that long-term contract. 12 years ago now. He got paid lots of money.
I think it was about 10 years ago, maybe 10 or 11 years ago.
I know he got an extension. I can't remember if it was 9 or 10 years. I should do my research.
I think it was originally a 9-year deal. And the 9 years finished at the end of last year, and this year was just a 1-year extension. He won premierships with them there. One premiership there. One premiership. He actually didn't, John, because they last won the premiership in 2012, and he was 2013. He came after that, so he missed the premiership. They reached the grand final in, I think it was 2014. They were in the grand final. I think 2016 they lost to the Bulldogs, and obviously last year losing to Geelong.
Maybe it's his fault they lose.
I guess that's the one thing. I mean, it was the same with Tony Lockett as well in the late 90s, and he came back in the early 2000s as well. That big full forward signing, sets in your life, and that was at the time of the Super League war where, people in Sydney were looking at other alternatives to rugby league, but Tony Lockett missed the premiership as well, played in that grand final in 1996. Buddy Franklin, he missed out on that Swans premiership. That's the only thing he didn't do for the Swans.
They're one of those teams that are a powerhouse in the league. They weren't going to make the 8 weeks ago, and they're in the 8, and they're definitely going to make the 8. Well, they can't not play finals football. I think the culture that he brought is a big part of that. Farewell, Buddy. Make sure you get out there.
You're right.
Sorry. So, do you want to talk about the Matildas?
I mean, for full credit to the Matildas, finishing 4th in the World Cup. It's a great performance.
So there's a thing about them that's going around social media about their, what's it called? The Till It's Done hashtag. And so some of the things that they achieved, we posted about it. They were the first Australian football team to play a World Cup on home soil, which doesn't have a lot to do with the team, but it's still an achievement. First Australian football team to make a quarter-final. Followed that up with first Australian football team to make a semi-final. First Australian football team to play for 3rd place, or win 4th place. They had the longest penalty shootout in World Cup history across all football. Highest viewed sporting event in history. They had the goal of the tournament. They had the multiple sellout events. They topped their group, which Australia has done. Australian men's team has done before, I think once or twice. It was an amazing achievement. They highlighted women's sport as one of the things about women's sport, which I want to get into kind of now, and will lead into rugby union as well. People say that it's boring. No one wants to watch it. It's not boring. I think it's marketed wrong. I think men watch sport. Unfortunately, women don't watch sport, and men will watch any sport.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
If women's sport was marketed more freely to men and women, as opposed to they just tend to target marketing for women.
Yeah,
they will get a lot more numbers there, and you can see that by the Matildas.
Sensational performance. Well done to the Matildas. A huge effort, finishing 4th in the Football World Cup. And I guess the other things I noticed about it, having watched a fair bit of this World Cup, is that there are, I got to be honest here, there are some sports where you notice a big difference in standard between the men's game and the women's game. I think the NRL's one of them. I think the AFL's one of them. I think cricket's one of them. I don't think that about football or soccer. I think when the ball's in midfield and they're setting up plays, passing the ball to one another, it looks the same on TV as the men's game. The difference is, I think I might have said this previously, but the difference is in the shooting. You notice the power on the shots. Obviously the men, the shots are a lot more powerful. That having been said, the women don't take dives like the men do. The diving from the men is just pathetic a lot of the time. The women did not do any of that.
No, they had
so good on them.
They had the controversy where they said Australia did it, and it was just not believable.
No, that's right. And it seemed if they went down in the women's game, it was legitimate. They weren't staging for a free kick or a penalty. You can't say that about the men. No. That men's World Cup, people were dropping like flies trying to get free kicks.
Yeah, slight touches, slight brushes, the constant complaining. That's really like the biggest criticism about football across all sporting codes. Anyone who just watches sport. I just watch sport. I just love sport. I pay attention to all sports, but it's very, very difficult to watch football. Not because nothing happens, but because it's so ridiculously soft the way they take those dives. It's just unwatchable. It makes the game ridiculous. It makes the game a laughingstock, and the women didn't do it.
No.
They're hard. They're like tough. They fought through injuries. They wanted to take the field when they were injured. The game on Saturday, Sam Kerr got kneed hard in the calf. Like hard. That was like, oh. They wanted her to come off and she didn't want to come off. She's like, no, it's all good. And that's it. It's like a really good point. We're just going to take a quick break and we'll change memory cards because we need to get some more memory cards. And we're back. So, the Matildas. Did you watch the England game?
On Wednesday night? Yeah, I did, a bit disappointing, wasn't it, to lose to England? That's. I
was at the game. I was surrounded by English supporters.
Oh no! And having to deal with people like Piers Morgan gloating on Twitter after something like that.
I was also at the game by myself because I got a ticket. So they tried to include me. They were very lovely fans sitting around me, but it was not pleasant. That Sam Kerr goal obviously set the stage. I've never seen anything like that. Yeah. I went to the Australia versus India World Cup semi-final at the SCG, and that was the loudest sporting event I have ever been to. The Indian fans were amazing. That was the absolute best. When Dave Warner got out for like 11.
Yeah.
But it was nothing compared to when Sam Kerr kicked that goal.
So the Sam Kerr goal in the semi-final, I know, I mean, it looked at that stage as if Australia were finishing the stronger of the two teams and that they were a good chance of winning, but obviously England finished over the top of them. Do you put that Sam Kerr goal in the World Cup semi-final against England, do you put that in the Kathy Freeman category?
I think so, yeah. It was the goal of the tournament. I mean, I've watched a bunch of highlights now. Look, I'm not going to watch soccer, men's or women's, as it's just said, because I prefer a game where something happens. I'm not
You're not the only one, John.
But I've watched highlights of Sam Kerr. She does that week in, week out. But to do it on an international level is a very different thing. It was amazing. It was just beautifully placed. I love the commentary. She's going to need support.
No.
No, it was beautiful, and that'll be played for years to come on television, like forever. Not just in Australia, but I think around the world. It was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
And the crowd was. It's funny because there's hardly any British people there, to be honest. Like I was surrounded by them, like 6.
Yeah, you were surrounded by the 6 supporters who were there.
And the stadium was loud the whole time, but at that point it was just wow.
Would have been epic.
Even I got up and cheered. I'm very lazy at the games these days. I'm old. I just want to sit the whole time. I'm the grumpy guy that says, "Sit down, everyone. You're ruining it for me." But and then there was the Sweden game on
Saturday night.
Yeah, Saturday. Yep. I managed to catch the second half. Another disappointing result, but nothing to take away from the Matildas.
No.
And there was the England-Spain game last night. Spain managed to get there.
Spain got thank you, Spain, thank you.
Suck it, Piers Morgan. So that was
Go Spain.
I didn't watch the full game. I watched bits and pieces of it. I was busy
same here. Yeah.
And also I have no skin in that game. But they still managed to get 75,000 people to the event.
Yeah. I mean, the only skin we had in it was Piers Morgan not being happy about it.
My dad is a British citizen, and we were discussing it on Saturday. I'm like, we could technically jump on the England bandwagon, but no.
It's not
no. After the horrible Ashes test series,
at least we retained the Ashes though.
Yeah. Well, but there was not a pleasant experience from the British side with the whinging after Piers Morgan. I was like, no, thank you, Spain. That was again like a really. From what I saw, it was a bit of a disappointing game. It wasn't action packed or anything like that. But
no, just one goal at the 29th minute, and that I think as we've said that's a bit of the problem with the game, John, is that there's no middle level. You either have a goal or nothing happens.
Yeah.
And so that's why I was saying it to you off air before. Actually, I actually think do you really need the 30 minutes of extra time after the 90 minutes if it's level in a final or a knockout game in a World Cup? Do you not just go straight to the penalty shootout after the 90 minutes? I mean, it's highly entertaining. You're on the edge of your seat for the penalty shootout. Yeah. There are not many other times where you are on the edge of your seat.
And that's like 120 minutes of football.
Yeah, that's the thing. So why do the extra 30? If you go 90 and it's level, why go another 30 of it? Why not just go straight to the shootout?
Why don't they do Golden Point?
Our Golden Point? You'd be there. You'd be still there now playing the finals.
Oh man, just as part of I was at the what year was it? 2010 100-minute Tigers Roosters Golden Point.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
That was exactly
the Braithen Astor field goal to win it.
Yeah. That kind of shows why you can't go Golden Point, especially in soccer, because as exciting as it was,
you'd be still there now. We'd be still watching the game now.
We could watch at that stage. We could people in the crowd could legitimately see the lethargy, the tiredness. The running was slower, the hits were softer, and if it was in soccer, as they got more and more tired, there's less and less likely that they would score goals. So you would be sitting here going so what's the score now? They've been playing 26 hours now.
Yeah, So that's the thing. Do you bother with that extra 30 minutes, or do you just go straight? That's my argument. You go straight to the shootout. You've gone 90 minutes. You can't separate the teams. Don't bother with the extra 30. You just go to your shootout.
In a final, I completely agree. I know, it's also a hard slog to go to a sporting event that you've got to watch for 120 minutes, especially with the stoppages in football.
Yeah, and you get
extra penalty time.
I think one thing about last night's finals, I think there were 13 or 14 minutes of added time after the 90 minutes, and you already have added time after the first half. So you're probably looking at about 20 minutes on top of the 90 minutes of mandatory time.
And then, if it hadn't been a draw, going into another 30 minutes.
Yeah, so if you take 20 minutes of extra time, so you got 110, and then if, as you say, you got extra time, that's 140 minutes before you get to your shootout.
I can't watch that.
You're not the only one.
That's why I need 2 TVs. That's the thing. If I watched soccer a lot, I would be having 2 TVs. I watched a couple of rugby league games while I was watching the Matildas games. I watched some TV shows while I was watching the Matildas games. I did watch it. I do enjoy watching football when it's not men's football. As I alluded to, I can't stand the falling over. I like tough people. But I couldn't watch it for that long. I would have turned it off. I would have just gone, no, it's fine. I'll just pay attention to the score, NRL, not NRL. The news.com update or the Google update or whatever. So I think you're right.
Yeah, and come back to it when the shootout starts, if there's a shootout.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The government announced that there's going to be a $200 million bonus to women's sports funding on the back of the Matilda success. I don't think that's anywhere near enough. That's to be spread across all women's sport.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to. This is not obviously we're not on a political podcast here, John. It's a sports podcast. I don't want to get leaning either way politically, but I sort of think, there's a fair sort of show pony element to Anthony Albanese, isn't there? He's there to take all the glory. He's there in the crowd cheering them on. He says all the right things. But then you get to something like this and he's short on funding.
$200 million sounds like a lot of money. But
it's not.
It's not for sport. You say for women's sport, I think dropping $200 million into women's football would be, good, and then we could go look at all the other sports. But I just think it's not enough funding, and how that funding will be distributed, how it's spent. We already know. Yeah, we're not going to get into politics. But
but I mean,
we already know how it works.
But $200 million for the federal government. I presume they're the ones who've stumped up this funding. That's loose change. That's pocket money to you, all right. That's nothing for them.
Exactly.
You get to $1 billion, $2 billion. Well, now we're talking. But $200 million is nothing.
There's a massive growth in women's sport across all codes. The NRLW is quite successful. WAFL. They've got to chuck the W at a different place.
I think it's called AFL Women's or AFLW.
Yes.
Sorry. AFL Women's, I think.
So that one, that's been very successful. You can see that people will watch women's football. There's women's cricket that is not of the highest quality, and I think it comes down to funding. And then there's the women's rugby union team, which has had a big kick up over the weekend. Rugby union, I think, is in a dismal state of affairs right now.
Is this our segue into rugby union, John?
Do you want to talk about it?
I've got a bit of teeing off to do here, John, because Eddie Jones had a very fiery press conference. I mean, it was entertaining viewing, I'll give him that. It was quite the performance he put on, but he said journalists asking hard questions should give themselves an uppercut in a press conference. Now, look, he needs to start living in a real world. Does he really expect journalists to turn up at a press conference and stand in a circle and hold hands and sing songs with him about how great Australian rugby is at the moment? No one in this country's cared about rugby for 20 years, John. The last time anyone cared about it was when, in that 2003 World Cup final, when Johnny Wilkinson kicked that drop goal to win it for England. That was the last time anybody cared about it. He needs to get a grip and wake up to himself. He's not going to go to a press conference and have that happen to him where everybody just sucks up to him and everything's great. Rugby's not in that state at the moment. the journalists are just doing their job. Their hard line of questioning is justified.
100%. And we talked about the television deals before. You know the Rugby Australia, the rugby television deal.
It wouldn't be. Is it more than $200 million?
Oh, it was 110 the last deal. 110.
There you go. Not even close to 200 million.
We're talking about the women's sport just got more funding from the federal government than rugby union got from their television deals. I think it was only a 2-year deal. We might fact check that later, but it's still, we're talking about $2 billion deals for rugby league. Was it $4 billion?
$4.5 billion over 7 years for the AFL, their next deal. Rugby league, the NRL currently on a 5-year, $2 billion TV deal.
And then 110 million.
So it's
Eddie
worlds
Jones
apart.
thinks that journalists are just going to come and sing the praises of a team that hasn't won a Bledisloe Cup in 21 years.
Yeah.
Got dominated by New Zealand recently, and then they did do better in the second test.
Yeah.
But they've won nothing. They've done nothing.
Yeah.
Nobody attends. Well, they had. It's weird thing about. They had 85,000 people to the New Zealand, Australia, All Blacks versus Australia match. It was in Melbourne. I think there's a lot of New Zealand fans.
Yeah.
Nobody watches it. It doesn't get ratings. It's not exciting. And now they've got a massive issue with the women's squad.
Yeah, I mean, journalists are going to ask hard questions. They're not PR people. They're going to come and they've got a job to do. I mean, he's in a high profile job on good money, and with that is going to come a lot of accountability. You don't get the money. I presume, I don't know exactly what his salary. I presume he'd be on $600,000 or $700,000 a year. I know there's not much money in rugby, but he's not going to do a job like that for small money. He's in a high profile job on good money. There's going to be high accountability with that. He's got to accept that. He's got to start living in the real world.
I don't understand Rugby Australia or rugby in general with the way their funding works, because he's got money. He just hired Jason Riles as an assistant coach. That's good for Riles. Jason Riles is probably going to take over Bellamy 2024. Who knows?
I think Bellamy's going another year, isn't he? So maybe 2025.
Yeah, that guy's a vampire, I think.
He may never leave that job, Craig Bellamy. He'll be 90 and still doing that
Jason
job.
Riles is being, mentored to take over. He's going to get good experience in rugby. It's always good to go coach or do assistant coaching with other high quality coaches and in other codes, so you learn things. So he's gone off to do that as well. And then we can look at this thing that all of the, what were they called? The Wallaroos posted?
Yeah, Wallaroos, yeah.
They've done a social media, obviously it's planned because all of them posted the same thing, so I'm just going to read through it. You told us flying anything beyond economy was too costly, then you flew the Wallabies business class on a trip shorter than ours. You told us full-time contracts were in the pipeline, that there wasn't enough money to keep the men in the game, let alone us, then you paid $5 million for an NRL player. You said our program would go professional and our coach would be full-time. How many coaches has Eddie taken to the World Cup? He's just hired a new one. You continually say that we don't have enough resources, and yet we all saw the World Cup send-off for the Wallabies. We've seen the impact that women's sport has had on Australia's sporting landscape, thanks to the Matildas. It's time for the chairman, board and CEO to prioritise the future of Australian women's rugby and allocate adequate resources. It's time to acknowledge that we are not promoted equally, even on a free platform. The future of our game hangs in the balance. Is your move, Rugby Australia? Now, basically, the whole team's posted this on social media.
Yeah.
You've got Eddie Jones having tanties at the media because they're asking him questions about how poorly the men's team are doing and how much money they're getting. So, from what I can understand, Rugby Australia paid for the Wags to go and do the send-off for the men's team, but chucked all the women into economy. And he's going to have a tanty about journalists asking questions. There's something wrong with Australian rugby.
Yeah, it's been that way for, as I said, it's been that way for 20 years, and we had this, we have had this discussion previously, but if you once pay TV global pay TV stations bring you the other sports that you didn't have access to 20 years ago, like the NBA, baseball, American football, your gig, the UFC. Once you have more access to these sports that you didn't have access to previously, well, something's got to make way for that. And I think that's why rugby union's fallen in a hole. People are not going to let go of their AFL club or NRL club, obviously, but if they're interested in an American sport, well, maybe something like rugby union will give way, and that's what's happened.
It's quite strange because rugby union is quite popular around the world. They have a massive international presence. When compared to something like use social media as a good benchmark, the rugby union things like subreddit, the Instagram following and stuff is massive compared to rugby league, compared to obviously AFL because they're so Australian centric. There are some other countries that follow rugby league. Obviously nothing compares to soccer, the global game, but rugby union has a massive worldwide following. And the only thing I can think is, we're the experts, mismanagement from the top at Rugby Australia has just put it in this hole. You had teams shutting down. I remember Jared Safi left the Dragons to go play for a rugby union squad that closed a year later.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And they could be promoting the women's game. People will watch it. They could be doing much better with the men's game. But we just suck.
Yeah, and there's too much red tape in rugby. It's too hard to change rules. You've got to go through a Northern Hemisphere body that will never change the rules. So you just may as well bang your head against a brick wall if you think you're going to change rules. It's just... the thing is, we could sit here and say, they need to tidy the game up, make it cleaner and easier to watch. And then you go, yeah, but then that's what rugby league is, So that's the thing. If you want that cleaner version of rugby union, well, you've got it in rugby league. So why are you going to watch rugby union?
And that's the thing in Australia, especially. I believe British rugby obviously does better than British rugby league.
It does. Yeah, it's a bigger game in Britain.
And there's what I'm kind of getting to is there's no reason why rugby union couldn't be popular in Australia. There's a lot of people you come up with these crazy things like, because there's not enough population to support that many sports. It's nonsense. It's absolutely nonsense. There are now so many with pay TV, digital channels, people watch sports. They do. They watch NBA, they watch baseball, they watch MMA, they watch... With MMA, UFC is obviously the most famous one, but One Championship is now on Channel 7. On 7 Mate or whatever, but it's still on Channel 7. It's on free to air. People, there's a reason for that. Because people will watch it. No one watches rugby union. My opinion that it's boring doesn't matter. I used to watch it then. I used to watch it in January, February before they aired the NRL trials. And then I watched a game once. It was 27-21 all penalty goals, and I just said, I can't watch this anymore.
Yeah, the only time they get any publicity is when they sign an NRL player.
Yeah, $5 million for young Joseph Suwali, and that's a huge amount of money, to be honest, for a single player who's unproven. And if they have that much money, the girls are right, they have that much money, they should have invested that $5 million in the women's game.
And that's the thing, he's not the guy to spend your $5 million on. If they were to get someone like a Cameron Munster or a Nathan Cleary, assuming he's injury free, a Tom Trebojevic, all right, throw your $5 million at those players. Don't throw it at Joseph Suwali. They've gone for the wrong guy. Joseph Suwali's cheering. Good luck to him. Good luck to him.
He's 18 years old.
He's taking $5 million off rugby, so good luck to him.
It's crazy. It's just crazy the way they manage everything over at rugby union. And there's no reason why we couldn't be watching rugby union if it was more exciting.
100%. Couldn't agree more, John.
So there's the World Cup for rugby union coming up, obviously. There's a lot of World Cups this year. There's the Cricket World Cup too, which starts 5th of October.
Perfect. Just after the AFL NRL seasons are finished. That'll give us something to talk about in October, John.
Exactly. There's 10 teams, just to explain to people, because cricket actually has a different style for their World Cup, which is exactly what I was talking about before. there's 10 teams. Each team will play the other 9 teams once for 45 matches before moving into the knockout stages. So it's in India. I've heard they aren't expecting huge tourism to travel to India to watch it. And they're a little bit worried about the lack of tourism for people who want to go to India to watch it. But I can't imagine Indians not going to cricket matches. From what I heard, Indians...
Why is that, John? Why would there be the concern over the lack of...
People don't want to go to India.
Right, okay. Would that be... And I don't know if this is still going. Has that got anything to do with the COVID-19 situation?
So.
Yeah, okay.
There's a lot of this.
People still hesitant to travel. Yeah.
It's going to India, traveling all around India, following your team. It's quite a large kind of thing to do. And yeah, so that's the expectation. I hear these kind of things before every World Cup across every sport, actually. Other countries are saying no one's going to travel there, but then, Qatar World Cup was a success, right?
Yeah,
no one was going to go to Qatar.
Exactly.
Everyone went to Qatar. We'll see what happens. But I imagine they'll have a massive event over in India. They're cricket mad. And Ben Stokes decided not to retire so he could play in the World Cup.
Right. There you go, yeah.
I would expect India to win the World Cup at home this year. They've got a good squad and there's no reason why they can't win in front of their home crowd.
I think in every format you'd have to say India are just probably the strongest. I mean, in the Test match format, I mean they've beaten Australia out here twice in a row. I mean, nobody else has done that in my lifetime. So India's really hitting the mark. The home side. It's hard to see them. It's hard to see anyone toppling India over
I think
that.
they'll just go smash through. They'll probably top the ladder period and the opening thingy, the 10 teams playing each other 9 times once. And then they'll be able to just dominate, I think, all the way through. I can't see any other team doing anything to trouble them.
Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes hard to get a gauge on ODI form because Australia a lot of the time they don't play their best team. They rest a lot of players, so it's sort of hard to know sort of going in terms of the landscape of international cricket. Do you think are we sort of at a point where 50 over ODIs should just be like an Olympic event, like a World Cup once every 4 years, and you just run Test cricket around it? There's just so many meaningless one-day international games now.
Yeah, I don't know. Like they used to before the 2020. It was a much bigger thing because it was something that was more easily accessible to fans. Actually, you go to the one day.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
and now we got 2020, which is way more accessible to fans.
Yeah,
because that's that 2-hour sporting event. There's also I think from an Australia specific standpoint, there's responsible gambling, responsible drinking laws all came in, which shut down the interest in the ODIs because. It used to be a thing. You go there,
spend 8 hours drinking as opposed to 3 hours at a 2020 game.
I actually knew a guy who worked at a hospital, who had 2 doctor friends that were both British who put colostomy bags in to go to the cricket. So that was the kind of. But now it's light beer. It's less. I know alcohol isn't drink responsibly and all that. I know alcohol isn't the be all and end all, and it shouldn't be what you go to the sport for. But I think just with restrictions that are all around the world as well, as we become a more educated society, the one day is on the outer. There's just something that we should do as a event.
I think the World Cup, the 50 over World Cup, still absolutely has its place as still probably the biggest honour in world cricket, winning it because it's that happy medium. I mean, it's really hard. I know they've got the Test Championship now. But running a Test World Cup, I mean, logistically, that'd be a nightmare.
Takes 7 months.
And there's still that element of people who think that the 2020 World Cup is a bit of Mickey Mouse, So the 50 over World Cup is that happy medium where it's not Mickey Mouse and you take it seriously. So absolutely it has its place. Absolutely it's still the biggest honour in world cricket. But you sort of wonder whether the ODIs around that are relevant anymore, and whether they need to look at that, and whether, again, John, is that another deeper conversation for the summer for us?
The warm-ups, they just need them for the warm-ups.
Yeah. So lead into the World Cup, you play some warm-up games. But what use is there playing ODI cricket after a World Cup finishes, for example? Like, say you play the World Cup this year, right? Why bother with ODIs next year or the year after? Just play them in a World Cup year, leading into the World Cup. Yeah. Then you got a World Cup. I think, now we're looking at a situation where aside from that 50 over World Cup, we're just looking at Test cricket and 2020 cricket.
Yeah, I think that's the way of the future. 2020 has broken one day, actually. It really has. And it's good because it made more people go to cricket, because cricket is traditionally, people who don't like sport won't watch cricket because it's so long. And when you talk about nothing happens in soccer, nothing happens in cricket. You'll have literal days of nothing happening, and then they'll replay a highlight for the next 5 days after it that one thing happened. And so if you don't like cricket, you can't watch cricket. But 2020 is so much fun. Flashing lights.
Yeah. It's like 2020 cricket's like Facebook, and 50 over cricket's like MySpace. Right?
Yes. Yeah. So that's another World Cup that is coming up. I think this starts this week. Is the Basketball World Cup.
Yeah.
Which has very little interest. It's not on free-to-air television in Australia. It's only on, I believe, Stan Sport.
Right. Okay. So not even on any of those Foxtel channels. It's a Stan Sport product.
It's Stan Sport or Paramount Plus. I can't remember exactly. It's hosted in Philippines, Japan, and Indonesia. And those are apparently massive basketball countries.
How do you think we're going to go in that? What's your prediction?
So this is the thing I wanted to get into, right? We are in Group E, so they have the standard World Cup format. We are the third seed, okay, for the whole tournament. So we're the third seed in the whole tournament.
So 4 teams per group, top 2 go to the knockouts.
Yeah. And so in our group we have Germany, who are the 11th seed, Finland, who are the 24th, and Japan, who are 36th.
Right.
So there's no reason why Australia shouldn't make the knockout stages.
Yeah. So that's the first step, and then you go from there, don't you?
Then you have USA, who is obviously the first seed. They're taking a second and even third string team. None of their superstars are playing. I think in basketball, the Olympic basketball is the pinnacle, the highest honour. The Basketball World Cup is not very important. And so I think Australia can win. It's USA, super heavy favourites even with their third string team. Okay, they're paying $1.91. Canada is second at $5 and Australia is third at $8.50. We do now have some injury concerns. We've had a few injuries in our warm-up games, but I think Australia can win. I really do.
You think they can win the whole thing?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I think this is their best chance right now with USA.
The USA don't take it seriously. Yeah.
And the fact that we're going to get good form going in it through the group stages with I'm not talking bad about. I am talking about Germany and Finland and Japan, but we can get good form and a lot of confidence in the group stages that can take us all the way. So
yeah, great.
I'm actually excited to watch some of it. I don't want to pay for another membership.
Yeah.
So I'll be paying a lot of attention to the highlights, and if I can go to the pub and whatever.
Yeah.
Because basketball's pretty entertaining, man.
It is, yeah.
A lot happens.
Of the big American sports, it's the most entertaining of those. It's more to me, it's more entertaining than American football. It's more entertaining than baseball. Baseball, you go too long without the batter making contact with the ball. You're just in this strikes and balls phase for too long in the game. But basketball, fast paced.
Yeah.
Always something happening.
So that's one of those sports that they'd never be able to do a lot of video review because it's instantaneous.
Yeah, 100%. So it's sort of like rugby league in that regard, or AFL.
And it's like it's actually like, there's a lot of like showmanship in it. It's super entertaining. So I'm pretty excited for the Basketball World Cup. I know a lot of Australians couldn't care less. The Australian local NBL? Yeah. That's been on.
It just doesn't get much publicity, does it? I think it's still on it. I think ESPN do it.
Yeah.
Out here,
So there's not much interest in the Basketball World Cup simply because there's not much interest in club.
But I mean, the NBL I think it's the second biggest league in the world, though, if you can believe that after the NBA. So but obviously there's a big gap between the two, but
there's a big gap between them and everything. So one of the things there is actually people don't know that there is actually a lot of interest in basketball in Australia from a gambling perspective. You win some, you lose more. So when the NBA is on, there's a massive interest in like a lot of bets go on through it. And so it does get a lot of watch time. A lot of hits to the website and the Fox Sports and stuff, and not Fox Sports, ESPN and stuff like that are basketball driven during the actual basketball season. So I think that's another sport that could go very well in Australia if there was more investment in it. I don't even know if there's a women's league, but they
I think the WNBL,
Oh yeah, because it's the girl, the one that everyone hates.
I know the one you mean.
She's going to go play for Nigeria after she allegedly racially abused the Nigerian team.
Yeah, I know the one you mean. I just can't think of her name at the moment.
Liz Cambridge.
That's it, Liz Cambridge. Liz Cambridge, not a very popular member.
Yeah, so she's
of the Australian team.
In the women's team, she's going to probably go and play for Nigeria. Of course, she qualifies for Nigeria.
It's not ideal.
There was a whole thing earlier this year or late last year in which in a warm-up, well, it wasn't a warm-up game, or it was a warm-up hit-out kind of thing where she apparently racially abused them, and there was actually strikes thrown.
Right, okay.
One of the Nigerian women checked her and then threw punches, and that was a whole thing about how the rest of the Australian team didn't even jump in. It was they stood back and didn't care. That's how much they hate her.
Yeah, right.
Who knows how much of a media beat up is, but some of the footage is coming out now.
Right, okay.
Mobile phone footage of it, and it's pretty shocking. We might post it on our social. There is the women's NBL.
Yeah, WNBL,
WNBL, yeah. But I'm quite interested in basketball. I will make sure we keep some updates on our social this and what happens.
We'll follow it.
On Thursday. I think Australia is also kicking it off, but it is in, like I said, Philippines, Japan, Indonesia. So the time difference is a bit of a nightmare for us to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty much it for my notes.
Yep.
UFC 292 was yesterday. Aljamain Sterling lost his championship to Sean O'Malley.
Yep.
It's quite funny because they put in the news fan favourite Sean O'Malley, but if you read the internet, everyone hates Sean O'Malley.
Not exactly a fan favourite.
There was one really interesting thing for me. Wang Zhili, the only Chinese champion, she dominated Amanda Lemos. It was the largest strike differential ever in women's MMA.
Right.
I think the stats were Weili threw 288 or connected with 288 strikes, and Lemos connected with 21.
Wow.
Weili Zhang is just another animal. It's amazing that Rose Namajunas has beaten her twice. It's Max Holloway versus the Korean Zombie this weekend. I think this weekend or next weekend. That's pretty much it for the weekend wrap up.
Sounds good, John.
And we'll do another catch up on Thursday for we'll do a deep dive into the NRL games, AFL games, and the basketball. Cool.
Sounds good, John. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, everybody. Don't forget to go to smartb.com.au and check out news, odds, everything. As always, you win some, you lose more.
See ya.